whose quotations that we are seeing as we come down the stairs. We have walked through history, and some illustrious historical documentation and photos are a testimonial to this thing. And what is the Elysee Treaty that we are talking about? What are these processes? And how did the 2019 treaty also further reinforce what has been happening?
The vision about the European continent is that this is the continent which simultaneously experienced conflict as well as progress and cooperation. In case of Europe, we all know that for centuries Europe has been center of material progress as well as ideological and intellectual developments. At the same time, this is a continent which has experienced a lot of wars and conflict. And in this regard, Germany, France and Britain have been the major actors in both respects. There was European unity or integration desirable after 1945. So first factor was in the context of World War II compared with World War I. European people and European leaders, they wanted lasting peace in the European continent because they could no more afford further wars. For example, they were not in a position to have another World War, namely World War III, after like 20 years or 30 years. Second factor was, of course, Soviet threat in the context of Cold War. European integration encouraged by the United States and for many years stimulated by the fear of the Soviet Union. And third factor was socio-economic recovery in the context of destruction caused by World War II. Because World War II caused socio-economic devastation to European nations. Socio-economic recovery was important to regain political legitimacy on part of European leaders. This was possible through cooperation and working together, the European people and European leaders and Europeans.
The speakers before have already spoken. France and Germany fought many wars, and then the two big wars, the First World War and the Second World War. And the big question was how to bring peace to Europe. Now, what the Schuman Declaration did was it began really small, right? It began with free trade in coal and steel. And these two countries then, as aptly said, became the engines of cooperation in Europe. The two biggest economies in Europe. We'll talk about what they could and could not cooperate, but they began really, really small with free trade in coal and steel. And slowly and steadily, the idea of, as was aptly pointed out, was a free trade area, then became a customs union, and then an economic union, and then hopefully it becomes an even stronger political union. So the steps were small, and then slowly they became institutionalized and to what we have as the European Union today, with again the Lisbon Treaty, and it's after sort of institutional build-up of French-German relations in the European Union, is that cooperation, especially with less of the European Union, that cooperation might come slow. And it's to build steady cooperation, you can't sort of always have a shock therapy. It has to build up over the years, and the European Union showed that. It became very, like, starting with everything small. I teach my students the politics of Europe, and I told them again that they slowly and steadily became the European Union as we know it today, and most of the decision making in the European Union is done by consensus, right? And so no country feels sort of left out and not being heard. And I think this, I think if we translate this into the Indian and Pakistani case, European Union define any borders, right? And the answer to that is no. The European Union doesn't define that here's where Europe begins and here's where Europe ends. I think what binds the European Union more than anything else is a shared sense of values. And this is sort of the core of soft power. A core of binding countries together is when you bind people together with a shared sense of values. Real sort of power comes through the people. Long-lasting relationships come through people and not through leaders just signing agreements. And this is important to learn for Pakistan and India as well. I think hate mongering among people would again increase the divide between the countries. And lasting cooperation will come only if, I'm a public opinion scholar, only comes if public opinion in the countries is favorable towards other countries. And countries together is bringing peoples together. And I think we have a lot of students here who can again be engines of bringing the region together. And I think one of the lessons that regional organizations in South Asia are doing really badly. And the reason behind this, of course, is that the two biggest countries of South Asia are not cooperating. And I think South Asian regional organizations also have a lot to learn from the EU. When you have research and cultural exchange, you share knowledge, you share people. I actually first came to Germany as an exchange student as well, and learned German as an exchange student as well. For me, of course, that was my into European culture, to German culture. And then slowly and steadily, of course, you gain an appreciation. As I said, I'm a public opinion scholar. If you ask someone who doesn't like Europe and America, and then you ask him, have you ever been to Europe or America? His answer will be most likely no. So you tend to hate upon, or when you have little knowledge, or you've not interacted with the societies. A lot of my students, for example, ask me, sir, if we go abroad, will we feel discriminated? Will there be racism, etc., against us because of where we're from? I tell them, I shouldn't be saying this, maybe it's not, that maybe you'll probably face more discrimination here than you face there. But that's being politically incorrect. But I just wanted, because you fear the unknown, and of course, fear what you hear in the media, because again the media is highlighting some of the most negative cases. But when you bring people together, you develop real understanding and real understanding of cultures, and that's the power of exchange. The more people come together, the more they understand cultures better.
Universal truth that even the deepest rivalries can evolve when leaders choose imagination over inertia, institutions over impulse, and cooperation over confrontation. The lesson for South Asia is not to copy Europe by any means. It is to recognize that change is possible, and the cost of perpetual rivalry is borne not only by states, but by their peoples, their economies, and their future generations. In conclusion, I would say that the story of France and Germany is ultimately a story of political courage. Courage to acknowledge past mistakes. Courage to break cycles of hostility. Courage to imagine a region where geography binds nations together instead of driving them apart. South Asia deserves that courage. India is the region's biggest power, can set the tone, not by endeavoring dominance, but by offering stability. If former enemies in Europe could build a community that transformed their continent, there is no reason South Asia must be trapped forever by its history. The German-French reconciliation invites all of us to believe that peace is not a miracle. It is a choice, one that must be renewed with every generation. Ladies and gentlemen, the real victory of Europe was not won on battlefields, but rather in the decision to trust where trust had once been impossible.